Hi, welcome to the NIRI 2018 annual conference in Las Vegas. I'm joined by Ron Schneider from Donnelley Financial Solutions. Thanks for joining us, Ron.
Thank you, Ben. Happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. So we're going to be discussing some trends in proxy statements. We're kind of midway through proxy season or getting towards the end of it now. So what are we seeing in terms of some proxy statement trends this year?
You mean that dry, boring legal document, the proxy statement?
Everyone's favorite document.
Well, it's very important for companies and for their investors, and there's been significant evolution in proxies for some companies going back a decade or more, for others fueled by CDNAs and say on pay, for others their peer companies are doing different things and their investors own their peers, others onboarding new directors who work for other companies that communicate differently with their investors are, we can do better here. Okay, so there's a variety of reasons, and while it is a legal document, a serious, regulatory filing that's scrutinized by many audiences, IROs are increasingly playing a major role, and an increasing percentage of, people are concerned about the length of proxy statements. Most of your institutional investors treat it as a reference document, not a reading document. So depending what they're looking for, they want to find it there. And increasingly, a lot of the length is voluntary disclosure. It's not just the required tables and charts. It's not what we do, it's why we do it, okay? So we are seeing discussions of company strategy in proxies. We're seeing robust cover letters from management, boards, both, combined chair and CEO, lead independent director letter. We are seeing board diversity highlighted. Investors want to know about board diversity, skills, qualifications, gender, and otherwise. So we're seeing graphics there. We're seeing skills matrices. A big question investors have had for many years about executive compensation, a very arcane and complicated topic sometimes, is we're not experts on it. We don't want to second guess the judgment of the compensation committee, but just tell us how pay supports business strategy. Explain that to us, because if we understand that, we're likely to be a little more, we get it. We're likely to be more forgiving about, administrative features that a proxy advisor may not like. And Ben, I'll tell you, it was very telling yesterday at the panel on a proxy statement evolution, where a major governance voter head of a major institution said, we're not just seeing an evolution in proxies, it's a revolution now. It used to be, I looked at 24 large cap companies that were really in the vanguard, and now it's hundreds of companies and not just large caps. And the payoff to companies, here was the beautiful point she made. When the proxy talks to us about strategy, why the board skills are right, why compensation is right, what is the company's sustainability in the face of climate change? That's a big issue. Not just doing well for the climate, but what's the climate's impact on the company and its long-term value? We are less dependent on proxy advisory firms, because if we use them as screening tools, and if they flag things for us, we then go to the proxy to look for the countervailing information. If it's dry, boilerplate, not informative, we have nothing else to go on. And we don't have the capacity, owning 8,000 global companies, as many do, with a 4 to 10 person staff, as many of them have. We want to vote thoughtfully. And think of the index investor, Ben. They don't intake the company's IR communications on a regular basis. They would like to vote thoughtfully. So they're saying, if you want us to take it into account, put it in the proxy. Talk about strategy in the proxy. Talk about board skills and strategy. Talk about pay and strategy. Talk about sustainability. Put those in the proxy, and that will help us to vote more thoughtfully and be less influenced by negative proxy advisor recommendations. And I think that's a big payoff for companies.
Sure, absolutely. And as you just outlined, the list of topics that can be covered or relevant to be included in a proxy has increased significantly. Given the concerns you mentioned about the length of proxies and so on, what are we seeing in terms of digital proxies, and does that mitigate against the length? Does it make a proxy more searchable and easier for investors to consume?
There are still proxies that are 70 pages long and don't even have a table of contents. okay? Step number one, okay? So think of two types of audiences. The retail investor that uses it like a reading document, front to back. I look at them that way because I'm analyzing them. Or the institutional investor using them as a reference document. Also, remember that a retail investor is 4 times as likely to vote if they get that old-fashioned piece of paper in the mail than if they get a one-page notice of internet availability. Those stats are very consistent every year. They're on Broadridge's website. The institutional investor tends to look at it online. But where? And I'll tell you where, everywhere, okay? SEC.gov, the company's website, the ISS site, all those places. And as a reference document, they want to search it quickly. Now, proxies aren't all standard in terms of the location or the sequence of information, okay? They have to have certain information, but different companies treat it differently. So they want to get there quickly. So it's like, so a table of contents, and not just saying executive comp, page 20 to 47. Well, how about what's going on within there? Or some companies will have a supplemental table of contents or roadmap about their CDNA, because that is the most heavily scrutinized section within the proxy. Some investors, and I was on a panel with a leading manager at Glass Lewis, said, I don't use tables of contents. We just do a word search. So that's fine. So navigation, clear sequence of information, page headers and footers. Some of them are looking at 4 proxies on the screen at the same time. This is interesting. Whose proxy is this? Got to go back to the beginning. Doesn't take long, but if every page identifies which company at the bottom, what section am I in, makes it easier. So variety of navigational tools. And for the online reader, they don't just want to, I see page 57. They don't want to scroll there, they want to jump there. So please make sure that the table of contents, as detailed as it is hyperlinked, so they can just click on it and jump there. So these are really not revolutionary things, but I think it's important to think about the different audiences, the different reader types, the hard copy versus the online. It's the same document, the same content, but how they use it and make their lives easy. And if you don't know, talk to your investors and they'll tell you. I mean, don't just take it from me.
Sure. Now, of course, we're at the NIRI National Conference here. We know that the reporting requirements for IR teams are already quite demanding. To what extent do you see IROs getting involved with the proxy statement production? What areas are they contributing to, and are there areas that they could be contributing more, or there are best practices where you see good IR teams contributing a lot of information?
Sure. Early in my career, dealt with one person, the corporate secretary. That was it. It was a regulatory filing, black and white Times Roman, nice glossy annual report. I used to like to look through that. Now the focus is more on the proxy and the content there. Remember we talked about the importance of reminding people of the strategy and how that ties into the board skills, and that who knows that story better than anybody? The IRO, okay? There's also a risk of mixed messages, okay? I've heard from voters that go, I was just on your earnings call, and that sounded great. And then I read this proxy, and I'm like, the metrics don't tie in with that, or you're not making clear the connection. And so a good reason to, avoid mixed messages is have the messenger, be working on both documents. Increasingly, we have 7 or 8 functions, could be more people at clients working on the proxy as well as other documents. There's legal. There's IR, there's HR, comp, benefits, there's CSR, there's corporate communications, and we've had to adjust how we work, so we have collaborative, drafting tools to help multiple people work on the same document at the same time. But at leading companies, IROs have been involved in the proxy for decades, okay? And not every company has to follow the same model, but if you think about the audience, you think about the messages, you think about who has the skill set, who's great at engaging with investors, who's great at the company story? The IRO. They're a perfect match for the legal side.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Ron. It's been a really interesting discussion, and enjoy the rest of your time here at the conference.
Thank you, Ben. My pleasure.
Cheers.